Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andia, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. We have a very special guest on today. Jason Christoff is here. I am going to introduce Jason, but Jason, welcome to Quantum Healthy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience today. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Just to give some people a little idea of who you are and what you've accomplished here. You are a Canadian behavioral modification and psychology researcher, overcoming self-sabotage coach, mind control researcher, expert, and educator and truther. And you own an online psychological reprogramming institute, which is an international self-sabotage coaching school that focuses on brainwashing, propaganda, mind control, behavior modification, psychological manipulation, including how to reprogram yourself for a better life. And you are also very researched and a wealth of knowledge, and you've been invited to speak in 2024 at the Romanian Palace of the Parliament, the EU Parliament, Japanese Parliament, and the US Senate in Washington. And you also have a very wonderful newsletter, which we'll make sure people know how to connect to at the end here. But welcome again. Why don't we just start off with you sharing a little bit about your story? How did you end up becoming a mind control expert?
I have no idea. No. So basically, I'm Canadian and I went to McGill University in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And when I graduated, I opened my first business within 6 months, and it was a smashing success. And the thing about programming, mind control programming, I didn't know I had it at that time. And I had my own versions of it that were pretty severe. And when you combine severe mind control programs that you don't know are operating in conjunction with having some money in your pocket, you just sort of load, bigger bullets into bigger guns and try to take yourself out on a daily basis, which is what I was doing. I it was a health club that I opened, and I opened several during my time in Canada. And basically, I was so self-destructive, I could barely climb the stairs of my own fitness facility at 29 years old. So I phoned the Czech Institute in Vista. It's in California, around San Diego. And they sent me someone who was in Canada, a leading practitioner, which happened to be a friend of mine. And when she arrived, she knew I had these programs, these mind control programs. And I was like everybody else. I thought all my decisions were organic to me. So I wasn't in the mood to talk about some invisible force controlling my self-abusive behavior. She gave me things to do, and it really helped fix my body. I had this ache in down the left outseam of my leg for 15 years, and she took it away for 2 weeks. I was in 2 weeks, and I was very impressed with this magic she was doing. So I went and took the same courses that she took in California. And then when I came back, my evolution was sort of starting, and I was starting to train people on health and exercise and nutrition. And I found no one wanted to get healthy. They were terrified. They were absolutely terrified. And so it was embarrassing because a lot of money was being exchanged. They're going around town telling people I'm their trainer, but they're just as out of shape and just as addicted as before they hired me. So I phoned the Czech Institute and I said, we make some progress. I gave an example. I said, a lot of my clients want to lose, say, 30 pounds. They lose like 8 or 9. And it's almost like when they get to that double digit mark, like 10 pounds of weight loss and a 30-pound weight loss goal, they get terrified, they go back, and then we don't make any more progress. I said, is anybody else seeing this? And they said, yes, they're under mind control. You were under mind control, Jason, don't you remember? And I said, yeah, I kind of remember. And they said, I said, they said they get into it in higher levels in the institute. I told them I could not come back. I was too busy. They sent me some articles and some documentaries on this very interesting topic. So I started to study mind control applications and sort of apply to my clients and also inside my health facility. And then I started offering it online. I got so busy, I stepped away from the health club and I started doing it online. It became full time. That became so busy, I had to initiate this psychological reprogramming institute so that I could teach. Medical doctors came, chiropractors came, and health coaches came, members of the general public, because there's only one way to mind control a person. And so I decided to use all the tactics to mind control people for better results in their life rather than step into the dark magician's shoes and control people in a negative way. So basically, I'm at the forefront, the cutting edge of sort of some kind of mind control battle between dark and light forces on this planet.
Jason, it makes me think, what you just said makes me think of Star Wars. And you've alluded often to this dark and light forces. Do you see it that way? Do you think of that movie, or is there another movie that comes up or analogy when?
I think all humans love this dark versus light battle. They infuse it into their politics. Most of the movies have that as the background. Some light versus dark, the moon versus the sun, Satan versus God. And it's been, I guess, raging on here as a very popular movie genre in artificial entertainment and also in real life on this planet. And
Mm.
we can't seem to figure it out. We're always looking to take a side, and mind control can make you pick a side without knowing you're picking a side. And mind control is so powerful, you could actually think you're doing good at picking the bad side and picking the evil side. And that's how powerful mind control can be. And that's sort of my primary objective is when I travel around the world or I do lectures online, I'm just trying to get the characteristics down because the disguises will always change. So if you don't know the primary characteristics of a mind control campaign, or if you're even under mind control, you'll always lose out because they never keep the same costume for more than say 4 or 5 years, and then they do a little bit of a switcheroo, and because maybe you don't know the patterns or the characteristics, you'll fall for the next one and the next
Mhm.
and the next one. So it can get really, and the thing that I don't like about it as well is, let's say you have a lady who's addicted. Maybe she's addicted to junk food. And to be honest with you, they'll always think there's something wrong with them. If something wrong with them in particular, it's a lot of guilt and shame to carry around. But if you understand mind control and see that they are cueing you, when I say they, it's the opposite of the good side. They are indeed cueing you to become addicted. So, and the way by which they do that, there's this sort of loving part of the brain called the subconscious that they hack to make you addicted or make you fall in love with your worst life. And that part of your nervous system is actually perfect. So there's nothing wrong with you if you're having a hard time. That's sort of the point. And that's what makes me upset a little bit is that when you meet people that are stumbling in life and having a hard time gaining their footing on the mountain of success, their hardship is programmed into them. It doesn't matter what you watch today on the TV. And if you're a mind control researcher like me, I'm making a documentary, so I've had to go back into Netflix and see what's going on in there so I can have some modern examples because I stopped watching it about 10 and 12 years ago myself. So if anybody's having a hard time in watching anything on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever these channels are, or you're listening to the radio, they're just always programming you to have negative outcomes. So please don't ever think you're beyond saving or that there's something wrong with you or you're malfunctioning. You're not malfunctioning at all. You just gotta have to know the design this perfect, beautiful design that they're hacking to get you rearranging the furniture on the deck of the Titanic.
Well, that was a very nice piece of hope there you gave people. So I work in the field of addiction, and I'm an alcohol and drug counselor by trade. And we're taught that addiction is biopsychosocial aspects of it, which there are. And now, since I've studied quantum biology, I know that blue light, non-native, electromagnetic frequencies have a huge role that they're playing in addiction. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to what you think about addiction, and where does mind control come into that? And we're really in an epidemic here. I used to do a statistic when I was lecturing on a regular basis, and the statistic for 6 years was in 2015, 20 million people have a substance use disorder. And in 2021, when they did the national survey on drug and health, now it's over doubled. Now it's 46.3 million. It's probably even more. But how in 6 years does it get to be over 50% more than it was like historically up until 2015? Like that blows my mind, that statistic. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I'll tell you how the mind can be hacked. There's this beautiful part of the mind that loves us, and it does things outside of conscious awareness. Now, people already know there are functions in your body that are already outside your conscious awareness. Your menstrual cycle, you don't have control. Your food digesting, you don't have control. A cut healing, your heart beating, your eyes blinking when there's a splinter coming to it. And you have to remind people of that you have, as a human, functions that you don't control. It's this loving part of the brain called the subconscious. And all of those functions are done out of keeping you going, keeping you alive. It's a love of you that fortifies and initiates all those programs. You don't have to worry about your heartbeat. There's another part, an invisible part of the subconscious that counts repetitive content in the environment, all outside our control. We don't even know what's going on. What does that have to do with you being safer or continuing on? Well, human psychology is simple. Humans, like other humans that act, talk, and think like they do, and it's based on herd dynamics, it's safer in the bigger group. The counting of the most repetitive content is done to target and identify what the bigger group is saying, thinking, or doing. This happens outside your conscious awareness all the time at a ferocious speed. So not only is the counting going on that's invisible to you, once the counting has been tabulated and the most repetitive content identified, the next invisible process is making you adopt it as your own, all outside your conscious awareness. Be one with the herd. Go along to get along. Become a people pleaser. All genetically inside of us. Really helped us 5,000 years ago. Say you're in a tribal situation 5,000 years ago. You're a 1-year-old or 2-year-old. You're not really moving around yet, but you're downloading information at a very ferocious rate. And you notice there's two paths outside the village. And you notice everybody takes the right-hand path. And it's because the left-hand path goes to the crocodile pit, the hornet's nest and the scorpions are down there. You go down there, you're going to be in trouble. So it becomes automatic. You just do what everybody else is doing. And it's usually for safety-based concerns. This group I'm talking about knows this process, hacks this loving, defensive part of the mind, and then controls our content. And I'll give you an example. How many movies, this is in relation to addiction, how many movies have you seen when someone loses the job or has a hard breakup or has a hard day, and the first thing they do, you see the next scene of the movie, they're down at the bar having a drink. Hey, give me a double, Frank. Hard day, Jim? Got that right. You know, and so none of that is by accident. And this is where the aperture's really got to go up. Everything, your TV, unfortunately, and this is going to come as a shock to a lot of people, is a documented military weapon invented to control your repetitive content by a group who used to control the newspapers, who controlled the radio in the same way, who controlled the Shakespearean plays, who controlled the town crier in the square and all the harvest festivals hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years prior, doing the exact same thing, controlling the repetitive content to hack this part of the mind. And when you watch film, and I'll give you a good film, you can go watch Bad Boys, any of the four. So that Bad Boys is with Will Smith, and I forget his comedic sidekick. I forget what the actor's name is. But you will see in this movie the amount of alcohol imprints is in the hundreds or even nearing 1,000 imprints. And it's been shown that this part of the mind, completely proven that you only need 2 similar phrases, imprints, or patterns to trigger this part of the mind to say, that's where I need to go to find safety with the bigger group. So when you go over 2 imprints of alcohol and go into maybe 1,000, because don't forget, like there's a lot of scenes in all the bad boy movies where there's a celebration between the police officers or a wedding or a celebratory event with all the police officers, usually at one of their homes, and everybody cheers. And if you just everybody has a cheers of their alcohol glasses. And if you take a snapshot of that, the subconscious would be counting every glass and every bottle behind the bar, everything. And you'll need 2 imprints to modify someone's behavior to trick this loving part of the brain that this behavior, if you were to take it on, represents the safest card to play in the particular herd that you're in at the moment. And again, this part of the mind also has proven not to know the difference between what's on the screen, real life, and imagined thought. So it literally would think, as you sit in the theater or on your couch, it doesn't matter, watching Bad Boys with all these several hundred imprints, up to 1,000 of alcohol, that you're inside an alcohol tribe. And the safest card to play would be to adopt, mimic, and copy the behavior of the tribal customs, rituals, and ceremonies of whatever tribe you're in. This is how a lot of people are becoming addicted. That's a lot of times completely left off the table. Like even if you go to a marriage counselor today, someone could be watching Cameron Diaz movies all the time, which gives the repetitive imagery and messaging that being single is more fun and marriage is for the birds, and you got to keep changing your partners over and over again. Marriage counselor never talks about this, and you're not going to win against this part of the mind, period. They've tried. There's no willpower, there's no determination that can beat this part of the brain. It's known as an 800-pound gorilla, which will drag you toward the repetitive content, whether you want to go or not. You could willpower it a little bit. You don't have the energy to wrestle that 800-pound gorilla every day. So they even wanted to try and hack it. A lot of experiments tried to hack it other than using repetitive content. There are other modalities which will make you copy and mimic harder, but there is no foundational concept discovered to modify your behavior other than controlling your repetitive content. So all you have to do is control your own, which is what I teach. And you can reprogram yourself to do absolutely anything.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so yeah, you actually mentioned a little bit ago about the characteristics of mind control. So one of them being repetition.
That's like 80% of mind control. And you know what happened in 2020, there's lots of repetitive things that were said, and the themes were repetitive. So it not only counts for like very specifics, like stand apart to stand together, or build back better, but it will look for themes as well and mimic the themes, the fear, the terror, the concern. It'll mimic everything just to fit in. It'll mimic the behavior of the concerned citizens in the grocery store. And don't forget, if you work against the 800-pound gorilla, it doesn't speak your language, English, French, it doesn't speak Spanish. It speaks in nervous system impulses. So, and everybody knows these impulses, but they don't know how to describe them. You go to the grocery store in 2021, not wearing a mask, your subconscious is going to let you know that it's assessed the grocery store and your outside herbal tribal customs. And it will send a shock wave of fear and anxiety down your nervous system, hoping to manipulate your behavior. It's your own like invisible nudge unit,
Mm.
right? Go that way, say this, shake the hand harder, look them in the eye, right? Tell them you're a doctor, tell them you went to university. Like anything to try and fit in. This is what this subconscious will do. It'll nudge you toward the repetitive content that is already assessed for you. And it's been shown that the assessment happens at 11 million pieces of data download per second, while your conscious mind, which is what you're listening to me talk with, like if you're watching this and listening, you're doing it with your conscious, not your subconscious, and it can only handle 140 pieces of data a second. So it knows what's going on, and it's also been shown to measure things quantumly as well, which means for us in the self-sabotage realm, invisibly, because we have the McClintock effect. The McClintock effect is this counting of repetitive content in a sorority where the female's menstrual cycles sync up and there's no visual cueing needed. The subconscious senses it almost biophotonic. So the ability of our subconscious system to say, hey, I'm like you. Do you love me yet? Am I safe yet? Do you accept me yet? It's really bizarre. It's not just visual and auditory. It can also be pheromonal or thoughts, or it's pretty bizarre.
Andy, if we start having the same time, our cycles at the same time, we'll know we're truly bonded.
Yes, you means you're talking not only through the microphone, but biophotonically, frequency wise.
Yeah.
I have, can I just take you back? You just brought back a memory for me. During COVID, I was, learning so much about the masks and researching down a rabbit hole and finding out from a lot of authorities, reputable authorities, that they weren't doing the job, right? So
Mhm.
I thought, okay, I'd really like to go into public and not wear a mask. Couldn't do it. I had family. I had actually two family members, older family members. There was a reason why just for optics, I really needed to not. I really needed to wear the mask. My mom was in a nursing home,
Mhm.
and I really wanted my dad to have the confidence that in order to see her. So we won't go there. But I went one time. I was in the organics aisle, and there was this gentleman with no mask on, and he's a friend of mine. And he had taken your I just connecting the dots now. He's who told me about overcoming self-sabotage. His name is Victor. That's all. Thank you, Victor, right now, if you're listening. And he was just standing there going, and I said, oh my God, how long have you been doing this? He's like, from the beginning, I've never worn a mask. And I'm like, I was looking at him like, you're so courageous. And he just, I think he had your background with your course
Mhm.
to just have the courage, I guess, to do that. And that was very interesting to me. And you just brought back that memory. So thank you.
Yeah, and basically he would have had to deal with the fear and the attack. So sometimes there can be the subconscious is aware that there might be some nudging, emotional manipulation from members of the tribe to comply, but there also could be a physical attack,
Mm.
right? If you're not complying with the group, because the group itself, given that their herd loyalty is toward the bigger tribe, they also like to flex and gain hierarchy in their bizarre tribe. So they're going to come up and attack, say, Victor. I know Victor, he doesn't care. And so basically, you have this group dynamics where a lot of people will be attacking because they associate themselves with this herd. They feel very confident, and they're trying to fortify their herd as well because they know humans are a bit fickle in what herd they want to go to. And if someone else takes their mask off, they're sort of one man down in their bizarre, medical cult herd. And so they're very vicious to attack dissenters in order to keep the message flowing that they don't want any crabs getting out of the top of the crab bucket is what they don't want. So they're going to attack really hard at first, And if you push back, and that's the thing about strength, we'll talk about at the end, but strength is important when you want to, when you know something's not right, if you also know it's not moral or ethical, you are going to need to stand your ground, and you will have to have financial strength, physical strength, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual strength to stand your ground. Because if you don't have those, and if people don't understand those 5 pillars of strength that I just mentioned, the group controlling a repetitive content have tricked us to degrade all those pillars for at least 7 decades before they attacked us in 2020, so that we were pre-formatted to be the weakest versions of ourselves before we were asked to do the most insane, immoral, and unethical things to ourselves and to others. So this group doesn't just fire their weaponry at us. They will weaken their victim for decades before they attack, and it's all part of the same psyop.
Okay, on that, oh, go for
yeah.
it. Oh, so I was going to say on the psyop, the COVID psyop, you did a talk called the ABCs of mind control on COVID, and I believe it was to the EU Parliament, and you had some slides. Is that the right one?
That one, that one was the COVID response based on clinical virology or behavioral psychology. The ABCs of mind control is at the Japanese Parliament.
That was the Japanese. Okay. Andy and I both watched that. It was phenomenal. Wondering if you could talk us through those ABCs.
I might forget the C, but A and
Okay.
B are always the same. And we've already talked about A, so there's no need to talk about it again. It's the repetitive content
Content.
and the controlling of it. Now, what's really interesting is you can get A to up level given certain other ingredients that you're going to pour into the recipe. And I can explain it very easy. We've already talked about group dynamics, the love of the bigger group, the safety of finding the bigger group. They've studied, and this will go to the B ingredient. They studied trail cameras. So cameras in the forest that get triggered if an animal goes by. And they used one of these trail cameras, the observers really like this like black lone wolf, really tough wolf coming in and out, never really sleeping in the wolf pack, sort of a real alpha and protective of the cubs and elders and the female, really perched up on the periphery, doesn't need anybody around, strong, right? It's the best position for fighting. Watch everything, and if something goes down, attack out of nowhere. The other, whatever intruder it is, not going to see that lone wolf coming. It's one of the bigger wolves. Then the wolf did get in a fight off camera, and then they noticed he wasn't sleeping out on the periphery anymore. He had nosed his way in to the herd to almost say, I'm a little damaged, I'm a little down, I'm a little injured. I will need the group dynamic in order to find safety for this amount of time. So when you're an injured animal, you need the group more. Bigger group, coordinating all these attacks on us and tricking us to do things to ourselves that go against our genetic self-preservation mechanism. They know all these studies. They're the ones that paid for all these studies. They don't care about wolves or fleas or fish, or they've done it, rats, dogs, cats. They don't care. They want the information about group dynamics so that they can weaponize it against humans. Injured animals need the group more. Poisoned animals are injured animals. So when you control the repetitive content of a strong herd, you only get usually 30% compliance to the repetitive content. But if you poison them, right? If you send them into the movie theater poisoned with caffeine, poisoned with sugar, poisoned with chemicals, are you starting to connect the dots here? Do you know? Do you now know why the liquor stores were open during COVID? Why the fast food restaurants were open during COVID? Why the weed and psychoactive substance shops, especially in Canada, We're
The
open
Tim, how
during,
about the Tim Hortons?
yeah, a drive-through only, right? You got to
Yeah.
get your poison, go eat it at home. So they know that poisoned animals are weaker animals. Weaker animals need the tribe and group dynamic more. And they didn't just poison us the day before they launched the 2020, it was 7 decades.
Mm.
Constant poisoning to increase the compliance quotient, as they call it, into the stratosphere, where people are like, financial strength is a form of weakness that would elicit a stronger group dynamic compliance response. And what they did, and they were very clever, for the 15 years prior to 2020, they made sure that it was prime plus a half. And prime was down to what? Half a point, 3/4 of a point, 1%, 1.5%. People went out and basically hung themselves out to dry financially. Their third kitchen, their second sea-doo, the renovation on the cottage, financial weakness out of those 5 pillars. So when they attacked in 2020, not only was the person poisoned, they were weakened, like weakened physically, weakened mentally, weakened intellectually. So you're just going to get more compliance because they're injured. And then when someone is even drowning in a tsunami of fear, there's a type of psychic injury to that. So when someone thinks, if I lose my job because I resist, I'm going to lose my cottage, my kid's not going to go to university, I can't, I just started the renovation on the roof, I can't afford that. All of that, all of it, coordinated by this group. And you're not going to get, like when you go fishing as a fisherman, you know you're not going to get the whole ocean in the net. But if you get a big haul, you're doing well. And that's what this is all about. Increase the compliance quotient, get as many of the fish in the net, and accomplish the goal, regardless of what it was and what it was really for. It wasn't about sickness. Get as many in the net and accomplish the goal with as many people as possible. Yeah.
Was the sea confusion?
Well, it
The
might,
80s.
I mean, confusion. Yeah, it might have been, yeah, it might have been confusion, but confusion is part and parcel of mind control because having your intellectual capacity shut down means your subconscious will determine for you that you don't have the IQ to figure any of this out. So confusion is always part and parcel of a sort of a higher end psyop that's going to go a little longer. And so that's why they would do things like, say, a curfew. Because if you allow the logical part of the conscious mind to think that through, that the virus will attack at 10:01, but not 9:59, you will actually get, if you were to hook up your brain to a brainwave scanner, in music, they call it a oscilloscope. So if you go to a music studio, when you see the music waves, and sometimes recording artists like to see the music waves. I don't know what they see in them, but sometimes they do. You can actually visualize, you can visually see a music wave. And if you send the opposite frequency into the oscilloscope at the same time that there's an opposite and opposing frequency going, like if they go and clash head on, you actually get a flat line. There's nothing to be heard. And the same thing goes in the human brain, which of course this group knows. So you have one brain wave function coming, say, from the left that says, basically, you got to get in by 10 o'clock. And the opposite brain waves coming from the right side saying, that doesn't make sense, that if it's something in the air, it doesn't matter if it's 10:59, 10 o'clock, or 10:01. And that's what they call cognitive dissonance, is you actually get a flat line. You cannot reconcile two opposite and opposing brainwave functions in the mind at the same time. You get a flat line, which means you don't think. Once your subconscious determines that you can no longer think, out of its loving function, it has a secondary defense mechanism for making decisions when it appears you're too daft to make your own. Compliance is the secondary defense footing, and the group knows that. So wear a mask into the restaurant, sit down, take it off, back on to go take a pee, back, back on when, and which begs the question, if you're wheelchair bound, do you wear the mask going in? Are you not standing? Maybe, all these things can go through a person's head. And there were so many confusing things. And as a mind control expert in the realm of public manipulation, you just don't pile on the nonsense regarding COVID. You confuse straight across the board. And this is where, Lee Thomas comes in as a man, starts winning gold medals as a male swimmer in the female championship in the college and university ranks of the United States. So you pile it on. You absolutely pile it on. Like, even they say, look, it's safe and effective, but the companies that make it, they have no liability for any death or injury. So there it goes. Here's one wave. If it's safe and effective, no one's going to die, right? Here comes the other one. There's the people who actually make the shot are accepting no responsibility legally, financially, for death or injury. More confusion, more confusing, flatline, flatline, flatline. And then a subversion, a loving subversion, where the subconscious says he or she appears too daft to make logical head nor tail here. I'm going to revert back to the secondary, more primal defense system, which is compliance with authority. And this is why, again, gyms are closed. My gym's closed, but the store next to me is wide open. Why? Oh, it doesn't, and nothing makes sense. And then once nothing makes sense, and no one pushes back, they're just going to hit the accelerator really hard, which is what they did.
A lot of people don't like conflict to begin with. So would you say that's just a extra thing overlaying that um, second wave of the subconscious when we comply because we had the flat line? Or would you say that's just another layer on top of it? Or would you say like people who don't like to avoid conflict kind of have that second layer of subconscious kind of going all the time?
I think it's the primary layer. We not wanting conflict is how we've survived up until this time. But there's a point where your life is going to be in jeopardy. And if you still want to comply to avoid conflict, then usually mind control is involved because you're subverting your genetic self-preservation mechanism. So, this particular medical application, according to Edward Dowd, a financial analyst that used to work at BlackRock and now is independent, has basically analyzed all the data with injuries and sort of excess mortality in all the countries that really participated in this. So the injuries and excess mortality, if added up, a lot more injuries than excess mortality, but we're in the 1 billion mark in the population. 1 billion injured or people have passed prematurely in the past 4 years, which is extremely excessive compared to the years before. And most of these people are sort of fingering the medical experiment as the reason why they're having trouble, or their surviving relatives are saying, yes, they took this thing before this premature event happened in their lives. So mind control is that powerful. It can move people against their genetic self-preservation mechanism by almost subbing in the primary self-preservation mechanism, which is go along to get along and be basically just try to be friends with everybody. And again, the research in the hands of this ruling group is they know every move we're going to make before we make it. And if we don't understand that everything we see, and when I say everything, I don't use that lightly. Like, your movies aren't there to entertain you. They're there to entrain you, to program you, to drop in either one or two or multiple repetitive themes or patterns of a particular behavior or idea they want you to live out, believing that idea, you're going to believe the idea is organic to you and you made it up and it came from the deepest well of your intelligence. Someone who thinks they're too smart to be placed under mind control has never researched the subject, because anybody can be put under mind control in minutes, depending on how good the controller is.
Yeah. It made me think about what like, I wanted to ask you, what do you say? Well, I guess maybe you don't talk to the people who don't believe in mind control, or they're skeptic, or they're saying this is conspiracy theory, or whatever they might say. Like, they basically don't believe because they're so deep in the mind control that maybe it's their just innate self trying to protect them. I don't know.
They don't think at all. That's the problem, because they just think whatever the group is thinking.
Right.
This part of the brain that is obsessed with our survival, it has a job. It does it wonderfully. It's obsessed with safety, group dynamics.
Mhm.
The opposite end that we can only get to ourselves as individual is happiness. So happiness and safety are opposite sides of the ruler here, where we measure our lives by. And this is what you're like, oh, they're too, they'll say it's a conspiracy theory. They're saying it's a conspiracy theory only because that's the word that stops them from thinking in that area. Because they know they'll be called a conspiracy theorist by their group of friends, and they don't have the strength to stand up to their group of friends. And a lot of people would be, I mean, the biggest fear in life, let's say, is like public speaking, and the second is death. The second is death. What it really means is a lot of people would rather die than have conflict. And a lot of people got their wish in 2020, unfortunately, 2021, 22, 2023, because they don't understand their own behavior, how their own ideas can be manufactured by the environment, for this loving part of the brain taking cues from the environment. And they certainly don't understand that all the people on TV, whether it's Dwayne Johnson, he's an actor. Whether it's your politician, he's an actor. And because you don't know that they're all actors, it doesn't matter if it's the news show, the advertisements, or your political, like Doug Ford, he's an actor. He's not even a good one. He's getting better. He tried to deliver some really aggressive lines regarding some electrical tariff, but it was still very bad acting compared to sort of the higher end actors. The highest politicians aren't there because they're popular. They're there because they deliver the lines the best. So everything's about entertaining you, giving you lies that make you feel safe. Humans love that. They love a good movie, a good storyline, and they love lies that make them feel fantastic, right? They like the human natures. We don't really want reality. We want some sort of truncated, fluffed up version of reality. So if people don't really want to, if they want to stay in that infantilized state, 40 years ago, you'd probably be taxed an extra 2% then, right? Because you're ignoring what's going on. You might lose a bit off your paycheck. Property tax goes at 1%. If you're infantilized now, your life's actually on the line, because you'd rather the cotton candy version of reality rather than compared to going out and basically breaking away from the herd. In psychology, that's called individuation, where you become an individual that you can still be with the herd, but can also stand against it. If you cannot individuate today, or if you've never taken the proper rite of passage from child to adult maturation, if you like the cotton candy version of reality, your life is actually in jeopardy. Absolutely. Oh, Laura, you're muted, I think. You're probably crying, so we're not hearing you. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry now for the next question I'm gonna ask you. Is, you kind of showed us that the media controlled us in COVID. Now we're, 5 years later. Now both your original country and my country, Canada, is being threatened to be a 51st state. This is not a political podcast at all, and I don't think Andy and I are really big into politics. But now it's starting to touch our lives a little bit here. And do you have any thoughts on what the Canadian people could do right now to avoid that? Do you have any thoughts? Are we being mind controlled in all of this?
Absolutely. I mean, Canadians have their own form. People in the US have their own form. And, they're sort of separate operation. Again, they're franchises of the same franchisor. And they have different policies and they sort of farm their human cattle and share through the franchises what works best over here. We'll send that over to the United Kingdom. What's going on in China? That's a good human farming operation. Let's get that going over in the United States. So basically, what any human can do is understand that this group is very good at dequilling the porcupine before it puts the porcupine in its mouth. And everything they do with the repetitive content is about tricking you to weaken yourself. And the main facet of weakening that this group is obsessed with is getting you to voluntarily wait in line to ingest poison, inject poison, or drink it. Because you can't farm lions. You can only farm lambs. And this group knows that. There's not a lot of them. And the farming humans is extremely dangerous. And it's the same reason we don't farm sharks. We farm tilapia. We don't farm lions. We farm chickens because we can grab them, we do whatever we want with them, and come over here. It's your time to go. That. And so, why don't we just become the strong human lion and lionesses that we were born to be? And again, this is why I've picked mind control to be my primary topic of focus, because if you're drinking wine, drinking coffee, and we've talked about that, and Dia, we've talked about the coffee a little bit before we came on here today, and the vaping, and in Canada, the marijuana, and it's all progressive. And the people who smoke marijuana, they're like, yeah, we won. We showed them it was our public force that forced that bastard government to give us our marijuana. I'm like, you don't know who you're dealing with. They don't give you anything to be strong. And their method of operation for thousands and hundreds of years have been drugs, the OxyContin, the cocaine, the opium wars. It was the United Kingdom, which has a lot to do with the group that's organizing things right now. They invaded China to take over China using opium. And I think the American army just pulled out of Afghanistan, but while they were stationed there, they would basically guard for the poppy harvest so that the heroin could go back to the United States because it weakens the human cattle there. That's why all these poisons are there. You dequill the porcupine. Once you are tricked, because here's the thing, if they could, they would show up to your house and force you to drink wine on a Friday night, force you to it, force you, put a seatbelt on you and force you to watch Netflix. And they would put a cigarette in your mouth and light your joint for you and say, smoke it. But obviously, if you did that with everybody, pretty obvious that something's going on, right? But if they trick you that it's your dream to have a 65-inch TV through mind control, trick you to smoke, trick you to drink the booze, trick you to drink the coffee. Starbucks is owned by Bill Gates, by the way, and his father, who's passed away. So that's how they do it. They dequill the porcupine by using the repetitive-based mind control. That's why the alcohol's in the movies and TV shows. The number one imprint, alcohol is second. The number one imprint is a takeout coffee cup, a clay coffee mug, an espresso or percolator machine on the back counter of a house or a restaurant or a coffee shop. That's the number one. And if you want to use mind control research, watch 20 movies and start writing them down. Which is the most frequent negative behavior they're trying to get you to do? Oddly enough, it's coffee. And if you don't understand caffeine's role in mind control, maybe you could at least understand that it weakens you beyond all comprehension, that basically it reads Stephen Chernisky's book, Caffeine Blues. That's just the physical detriments of coffee that weaken you on a physical level. There's psycho-spiritual, There's brainwave changes that makes you more open and have a greater propensity to be put under mind control. That's why my new documentary is called Planet Mind Control, because it's wall to wall radio, newspaper, Time Magazine, National Geographic, the school system. It's everything. Everything's coordinated to run in one particular direction, which is you don't know how to make money. You don't know how to eat. You don't know how to maintain your health. You have a drink. If you have a bad day, you're going down to the bar to have a drink that we just talked about. How many bad days are you going to have? And if you drink alcohol with every bad day that comes across comes across the docket, you're going to have a really messy life, which means you're easier to rule.
Yeah. You make me think about motivational interviewing, because motivational interviewing, when you're counseling someone, that's actually a modality that helps the person realize that they're making the decision and you're just aiding. And it's almost like this is like mind control is like, that for the dark side, right? And then you also made me think about, so I don't, since you don't watch TV, so there's a show called Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I've
It's way
reviewed
back in
that a
the
couple of
day,
times.
right? It's like, way long time ago. There's no coffee back then, right?
Yeah,
But Starbucks weaseled their way in.
yeah,
They were caught with a Starbucks on camera, and then it was,
absolutely. And it was viral on purpose,
of
right?
course.
It's none of it's an accident. Even in the movie Fight Club with Edward Norton and Brad Pitt, the director bragged that there was a Starbucks coffee cup in every single scene of Fight Club. Some people have watched it to confirm it. And yeah, it's pretty close. Starbucks coffee cup. And watch any movie tonight. Everybody's drinking coffee. You go to a cop show, there's the clay coffee mug on everybody's desk. And what's funny, if there's 8 desks, the camera angle's just perfect where you see all 8 coffee mugs. How is that even possible? And my friend who's done 150 Hollywood movies says, yeah, I find it odd. Every time the prop guys are setting up, there's always the coffee stuff, because I found it pretty bizarre.
Wow.
Speaking of shows and movies, can I ask you, maybe you didn't see it at all, but there was a show called, well, I think I don't know if it's still going, but on Netflix, called Black Mirror.
I haven't watched it, but I've seen it's pretty predictive, which means dropping
That's
in
the
the
question.
first repetition.
Okay, that's my question. Some people thought it's a warning to us, or
It's
is
none
it
of these are
programming
really,
us?
because you only need 2 reps, right? So let's take the movie Contagion with Lawrence
Oh
Fishburne
yeah.
and Matt Damon. That came out in 2011, and it had gym closures, mutating variants. It has mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing. It even had like a miracle drug called rubivarin, which is very close. Like it starts with the consonant R, right? Remdesivir, rubivarin.
Remdesivir. Run
Yeah,
death is
right.
near.
Yeah, exactly. They were trying. See, the reason they do all that, and of course, it was a bad in China. The virus in Contagion 2011 came out of China. So they're just dropping in the one repetition. It's called dormant programming or predictive programming. Dormant means this part of the brain never does any data dumps. It just keeps that one repetitive thing on its list. And then if the second repetition come in a decade later, it goes live as something to pay attention to, something to copy, something to mimic, something to take on as their own. And that means in 2020, someone who watched Contagion in 2011, they get this epiphany. They think they're psychic or something. I know what to do. Masking, social distancing, stay at home, lockdowns. And they're thinking, wow, how did I know all that? Well, it's because you watched the movie in 2011. That's how long they've been planning to, put you in the electronic guillotine. You just got to be careful, folks. The world's not what you think it is. The screens are not there to make your lives better. Like, what's a screenshot in hockey? You're obscuring the view of the goaltender. A screen door is, yeah, you can see the outside, but it's not really the outside clearly, right? Screens are there to obscure your view of reality. Be aware. They'll give you the definitions in the word they use. So just be aware that, and again, I know we're running out of time here, but if anybody needs any information about, I'll give I'll give people, if anybody wants to email me, I'll give you my free presentation. It's worth $199. You can have it for free. It's called The 10 Hidden Secrets of Government and Media Mind Control, and it uses COVID as a backdrop. So if you want to know 10 of the best mind control tricks they use to psychologically manipulate the population to go against their genetic self-preservation mechanism, watch that. And then the other hour, it's 2-hour presentation, but it'll give you a PhD in mind control. And I include the solutions as well. How do you fortify yourself against the tricks that I just presented? I give you the solutions for free. It's a separate presentation. They can email me at info@jcom, single initial J, and Christoff is Christ with an OFF on the end. info@jchristoff.com.
Well, thank you so much. We always ask a signature question. So we wanted to ask you, what does quantum healthy mean to you? Or how would you leave people with, not being in fear of everything that, like, you opened up a whole different way of looking at things today. And what would you say to those people?
I would say don't get nervous. All the answers are in your control. Go to your kitchen, be honest with yourself. Open your fridge, open your cupboards. If you want to know if you're under mind control, are you being tricked to poison yourself by your own hand? Are you addicted? And then if you want to find out, get some positive reinforcement, get some good reps going in the other direction, buy Paul Chek's book, Chek, Paul Chek. How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy is the only book you'll ever need to discover what a truly healthy lifestyle looks like. And then after that, you just work on if you don't know where to start, work on your foundational pillar of strength, which is the physical. It's the foundational pillar upon which the other 4 pillars rest upon. If you want to put the porcupine quills back in the porcupine, stop being revert back to being a human lion instead of a human lamb, work on your foundational pillar, which is your physical strength, exercise, healthy habits, and all those solutions are actually in that free talk that I just offered. So you get the full spectrum of what that entails, developing all these pillars of strength, make farming humans dangerous again.
Jason, we just want to make sure we capture all your offerings. I'll list a few and help me out if whatever I've missed. First of all, your newsletter. For everybody listening, this newsletter is the most interesting newsletter. You will stop in your when you're reading your email and read Jason's newsletter because it's so good.
They'll get it automatically when they email. So we'll just tell them
Perfect.
they've been added for free when they get it. They don't
Okay.
want to get the email, they can unsubscribe or just tell my assistant, nah, just take me off. That's fine. If you just want to get your master's degree in mind control and brainwashing, that presentation is what you got to watch. And then hopefully you'll catch on to the characteristics, because there's more mind control campaigns rolling out every day. There's a couple of big ones, right? You might want to recognize them. We're right back in another one.
Well, exactly, right. What about courses?
I do courses where I have a psychological reprogramming institute, but I only open it up like 2 to 3 times a year. And it would only be sort of advertised to the people on the email list. So it's better just to email for this free presentation, and then everything else will follow, where if they're interested, they can stay on and sort of understand how I educate the public. A lot of it's for free. If you're interested in higher degrees of education, I do teach it, but it's not mandatory at all.
And you have a podcast yourself, right?
I made 210 podcasts myself. I haven't done one in about 3 months, but people find them extremely interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can find all that there too, right?
Yeah, you can. If you go to my website, jchristoff.com, there's a podcast pull down tab, and you can get those ones are sort of the reveal everything, because there's you don't get censored on podcasts too much.
And the other thing is, you've spoken so much, and I just want to highlight for people that on your website under public speaking, some of those speeches that we mentioned in the intro around the world that you've done are there, and they're really good. Some have slides, and you'll learn from those.
Yeah, you can learn from those. They're right on the front page. Like the 4 big talks are right on the front page. jchristoff.com. You'll see the Romania talk, U.S. Senate, European Parliament.
And this documentary, how soon can we get excited for when it's coming out?
It's coming out in the fall. It looks fantastic. We're just working on it slowly. It's an expensive and slow ride, so we want to do it right, and we'll just continue on. We're going to make another documentary once this one is done.
That's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
And so it's my job, or my privilege, I should say, to thank you today, Jason, and had some fun coming up with a few things here. So please just indulge for a second. I know you have to get going, but first of all, because of Vandia's background in addiction, we both want to thank you for overcoming. You didn't really mention, you didn't give us details, but you've said it on other podcasts, but overcoming almost every addiction in the book is how you say it, using psychological reprogramming techniques to make your own mess your message and your disaster your master. And now, dedicating your life to self-improvement. Thank you for spreading the word, particularly on caffeine and how it affects our frontal lobes. You inspired both Andy and I to either leave my dark chocolate addiction and her coffee addiction. Thank you for being a thought leader, bringing awareness that we can all be influenced unknowingly, and why we need to turn off our TV programming with, all these things. Netflix, there's more than that. The news, all the blatant stuff, the subliminal
all
stuff.
the stuff.
All the stuff to help us to stop the hacking, as you call it. I find that so interesting. And the liarrhea, that's another word. You didn't mention it today, but I love that word when you mentioned liarrhea.
Lots of liarrhea out there.
And then as you said today, to help stop us from rearranging the furniture on the Titanic. That was a classic one.
On the deck of the Titanic. You could steal any of those. That's fine.
Also want to thank you for today sharing a little bit, giving Canada the roadmap to avoid being dequilled here shortly. And to also just thank you for helping to teach us how to remove the blinders, on what's really going on, and highlighting for a little bit on COVID, because some of us are still a little traumatized by everything that went down there. And the last part, I have to stand up. I don't know if you can see it here, but I wore this t-shirt for you today.
It's fearless AF. I like it.
Because you have earned this shirt, being so courageous, being the truther that you are. You haven't given up. You're persistent with your message, and surely you must be frustrated at how the world can't quite see things the way you do, at least just yet.
We try. We try the best we can. That's it's about progress, not perfection.
Perfect. Thank you for everything, Jason.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Dia, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Absolutely.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. And thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Andia at andiaray.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.